Okay? Now, if I want to look at the expression absolute value of x minus 7, and if I want to graph like y equals absolute value of x minus 7, what do? Well, I pick some representative x values. And the important thing about this graph, well, we'll see in a minute. We'll see why I chose these values, okay? Absolute value of x minus 7 is 2, then it's 1, then it's 0, then it's 1, then it's 2. And if I graph these, and I, leafed through this, I saw several graphs. Didn't always see graphs, but I usually saw pretty good responses to the first question, so it should be fairly easy to understand the graph. So here's 7. And now I can graph the numbers on this table. What do I get? Well, 7 gives me 0, 5 gives me 2, 6 gives me 1, 8 gives me 1, and 9 gives me 2, right? So I've got the points 5, 2, 4, 1, 6, 1, 8, 1, 9, 2, and of course 7, 0 right there in the middle. What kind of graph does that suggest? Well, from here to here, what's the slope? Between this point and this point. What's the rise? What's the run?
1.
Rise is 1, the run is 1, right? So the slope is 1. From this point to this point, what's the slope? 1, right? Meaning the slope is the same, meaning a straight line connects these points, right? Okay? So we can do this. And we conjecture that the pattern continues, and if we think about it a little bit, we see why it does, okay? And then on the other side, we have this. And there's a graph. Okay? So that's a graph of y equals absolute value of x minus 7, right? Now, I'm going to say that this is the graph of the basic function, the new basic function, y equals absolute value of x. And that's one of the easy basic functions. It's as easy as x squared, and even easier maybe. Okay? So I didn't introduce it at the beginning because I wanted to talk about varying slopes and stuff like that. I didn't want to talk about something that has a little complication in its definition, but you understand that if the graph of y equals absolute value of x shifted how? How would you shift the graph of y equals absolute value of x to get absolute value of x minus 7?
Horizontally.
Horizontally, how many units?
7.
And why? Well, if you know the graph of absolute value of x, which you probably do if you've read the section I recommended, you can see that it just shifts that graph over 7 units. But also, it's because you've replaced x by x minus 7. When you replace x by x minus h, you have a horizontal shift of h units, something I hope you're used to by now. Okay? And if you aren't, keep practicing, because at least you know what the rule is. Okay? So I'll say shifted how? Well, x replaced by x minus 7 shifts the graph 7 units horizontally, right? That's true of any graph. Just the way the numbers in the table change. It shifts it this much. Okay? So, we haven't even done the graph of y equals absolute value of x, have we? Well, if this is the graph of the absolute value of x, then the graph of the absolute value of x is this, shifted 7 units that way, right? So we take every point and we shift it 7 units this way. It's not the easy way to get the graph of the square of the absolute value function, but I just want to show what needs to be shown about transformations, okay? Now we go 4, 3, 2, 1. Here's 0, -1, -2, and that's all we're going to need, okay? So we take this point, which is 5, 2, and shift it 7 units in the negative direction. What do we get? Well, the x-coordinate was 5. We shifted 7 units. It's going to be -2, right? Shifted -7 units horizontally. We're going to get -2. So 5, 2 is going to go to the point -2, 2. 6, 1. You can verify, and you know, as I say, if you're not totally understanding this, it's new. It's understandable, but if we start at 6, 1 and shift -7 units in the x direction, we're going to end up at -1, right? And of course, when we shift horizontally, the y coordinate doesn't change, so 6, 1 ends up at -1, 1. And 7, 0 ends up at 0, 0, right? So that now we've got this, okay? And then using a slightly different color to shift these other points, good thing because I just dropped that one. You know, this point goes to here, and this point goes to here, giving us the points 2, 2, and 1, 1. So we have this, right? Make sense? Now, of course, if we make a table and for this function, we don't really need to worry about 1/2 because everything lies in a straight line. If we just use the integers between -2 and 2, we're going to say that's our graph of the basic absolute value function using the standard values, right? Make sense? And of course, the coordinates of these points agree with what you get when you shift this back 7 units, right? Because all these points have the right coordinates. So, if you don't totally understand that, it's an 8-minute, 9-minute video. Maybe you ought to ponder a little bit, okay? Because it talks about the absolute value function, which is pretty easy to understand. It talks about transformations in a way that'll stretch your understanding just slightly, okay? And also reinforce what you know already. 9 minutes and 4 seconds counting.